Hi everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, game masters, novices, and masters alike.
Wow.
And of course, Dan. My co-host is, of course, Josh.
I go away for vacation for a few days, and you
I got wordy.
You buffed it out.
I got wordy. That's all, because I haven't touched anything in a while. So on today's podcast, we'll be discussing all things quizzical and reciprocal, and eventually we're going to get to masks, the non-surgical, but mythical kind as well. So by all means, if you have any questions for us, we have some emails to get to first off, but if you have any questions for us, especially Josh, please email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get to you. Until then,
sorry,
Josh has one to clarify.
Yep, one real quick. I had mentioned in 2 episodes back, I think it was the last email episode that we did.
Yes, 2 episodes back.
Somebody had a question about the shaman spell. Yeah, so the shaman spell that allows the caster to turn into any non-magical beast, and the question was, what does that count as? I did a follow-up with Morgan after we had recorded that.
See how good we are?
And his answer was more or less what I had said, and that is that we don't rigidly define it, and it's more or less left for the game master to decide if something seems broken to...
Or will break their game.
Work with your player. Yeah, to work with the player and figure out something that will keep things decent.
Make everybody happy.
And so whether something is broken or not will depend in part. I mean, by the time you get the spell, it was a 7th circle spell. By the time you get the spell, your game is going to be sort of moderately high-powered as it is. And I suspect whether a particular creature is broken or not will depend on what else is going on in the game.
Fair.
So,
ta-da!
There you go.
Asked and answered. Look at that. 2 weeks,
ta-da.
3 weeks apart. We got you an answer for it. So,
more or less, this was a case of, answering off the thinking process off the cuff, and pretty much supported what I thought was the case. So, yay me.
So yes, if you have any questions as well, by all means, email us. We will get to them. We've gotten to every single one of them so far. So on to one from Jesse. And I like Jesse's email because this is the reciprocal part, because he has something to inform us.
Oh yeah, this one came in like the same day that the episode went up. This was also the one from 2 weeks back, as of the release of this episode. The previous, because it was the one we talked about trolls.
Yes. So good morning, Dan and Josh. I'm a huge Earthdawn fan. I've been playing on and off since about 1995. I picked up listening to this podcast as well as the Legends of Earthdawn actual play podcast during the current COVID pandemic, and have greatly appreciated the continuous stream of Earthdawn content and discussion. Kudos to all of you. Kudos to you, because you get like a double dose of Josh on both of these podcasts, and we're in good shape. This morning, I was listening to the just released episode 35 and your discussion of troll line marriage. In addition to being an Earthdawn fan, I also happen to be an anthropologist. Congratulations to you. I believe the cultural reference you were looking for might be one from the Tibetan highlands. In that culture, a woman marries more than one man, usually a set of brothers. In that case, it often serves the functional purpose of preventing land inheritance to be split among the male heirs of a family. By having the brothers all marry a single woman, it means that a set of brothers can remain as one household. It also helps to reduce population growth in a resource-scarce environment, as the limiting factor in human procreation is the gestation. A woman can carry only one child normally at a time, unless they have twins, while males can fertilize a nearly unlimited number of females during the same period. So, while the purpose may not be the same, and I believe a troll line marriage can include more than one woman, I believe this is the closest cultural reference it could be calling on. All the best, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse.
That's awesome. First off, thank you, Jesse, for that insight. I remember that email came in and I read it. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. This is a first for us on the show, which is great, where we were looking for an answer and we didn't have it, and one of our listeners had it and provided that to us.
Reciprocity.
That is
so. Yes,
yes, that's really cool. I have no idea whether that's where the writer took that inspiration from, but the fact that it's Tibet, which is a very mountainous region, which is very similar to the trolls, and the idea that it could potentially, it's not addressed in the Earthdawn material, but it could be something that would affect, household, clans, family
dynamics,
dynasties and things like that, and potentially limit population growth. Those all fit really, really well with the idea of the troll mountain highland culture in terms of that. So I think that's really
I agree.
cool.
That was an awesome answer, and Jesse absolutely appreciated. I love when games in general can occasionally teach things. And so if anyone was stuck on the same thing Josh was stuck on during that episode, line marriage, what does that actually mean? Where does that come from? You know, hey, we have an anthropologist. An anthropologist actually answered us. Congratulations. So we have gamers that are, you know, really, really smart and have lots of school behind them. So Jesse, absolutely love it. I love your Tiskrang name.
Thank you, Jesse.
Falal Katan, I'm assuming is Tiskrang, but it's just awesome. So keep writing in.
Does it have extraneous apostrophes?
One each. Falal.
Okay.
And then Katan. Yeah. So one apostrophe each name.
Okay.
So yes, extraneous apostrophes.
That is acceptable.
I like that. Yeah, it works for me. Second email we got from Cory. Or he's on Discord
Cory,
as Grey Wolf, so go look him up. Don't harass him because he's got great questions. Hi, Dan. Hey, Josh.
No, he's on the FASA Discord.
Cory again. I have a few more thoughts I want to share. First off, I wanted to say that I have really enjoyed the weekly episodes. I'm all caught up, but recently decided to go back and re-listen to the episodes from the start.
Wow.
You are really bored. I'm up to episode 9, and I figured I should send in what thoughts and questions I had so far. First off, I wanted to offer my appreciation for shutting down trash-talking other games. I personally am a fan of a lot of games, including Pathfinder, and it is very tiresome and annoying having to constantly weather the negativity that other people throw at games they don't like. Lift up the things you love, don't trash the things you don't.
Hear, hear.
There you go. What do you think of the idea of using the Earth Dawn rule system, disciplines and all, in a different setting, either homebrew or pre-existing? I don't have any specifics in mind. It was just more the thought I had while listening. He's got more, but we'll get to it one question at a time.
Yeah.
This is a good discussion.
I think if somebody wants to tackle that, that's awesome. One of the stumbling blocks of Earth Dawn in terms of potentially getting a wider fan community, I think, is because it is so, like many 90s era games, is so deeply entwined with its setting.
Fair.
That it can be difficult to take the mechanics, which build a lot of the metaphysics and way that the setting works, kind of integrated, and place them in another area, because at that point you're looking at something that is essentially Earth Dawn philosophically, but lacking some of the strong setting underpinnings of that. I think it's perfectly fine and valid to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that we are aware of in our sort of development space as we look at areas outside of Barsay for development, be that Kriana, Arancia, Elven nations, any other Cathay, although we're not looking at doing anything with Cathay right now, but aware of Cathay as a thing, is how do we make this area still recognizably Earth Dawn, but not have it be just, we've taken all of the stuff and setting baggage, for lack of a better term, from Barsave and just dropped it in a new location.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a difficult thing to wrestle with sometimes. And what do you do? How do you make it distinct? And trying to balance it's different from Barsave, but Barsave is so rich and fleshed out that anything that you try and develop that's different from that will potentially feel less coherent's not really the right word, but three-dimensional.
Distinct.
Developed distinct. And then you kind of tack on the issue with how the provinces that are defined and described in the first edition Theron Empire book, because they do not have the amount of space to get expanded and whatnot, can feel a bit pastiche in that regard.
Fair.
The worst offenders of them in general perception, I think, are Talia and Marak, and then probably Indrizia as the ones and whatnot. And nothing against Robin Laws, great writer. These are things that I have long said. Those parallels and similarities existed way back in the early days of the game as a concept. So, it's a matter of, looking at that. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but 1879, our sister game, which is also based on the step system and takes many ideas and concepts mechanically. It doesn't have disciplines the way that Earth Dawn does, because Magic in 1879 is not at the level to really allow those to exist. But the character progression still has those kind of recognizable, like, tiers of character development, and has many things that are very similar mechanically. And so that is, in a sense, kind of taking Earth Dawn and dropping it into a new setting. It's not a one-to-one parallel, but yeah, it can absolutely be done. And if somebody wants to do that and develop their own setting to go with it, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, you could grab a bunch of D&D settings, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, Forgotten Realms, any of those, just to lean on D&D a little bit, or a Pathfinder setting, Savage Worlds. I think I had an Earth Dawn crossover with Savage Worlds a while ago. Yeah, take it, just find the terrain maps and the locales. Use all that stuff. If you want to keep the Earth Dawn disciplines and magics, just go ahead. It's just putting it, off another map somewhere. You want to take it to like Earth Dawn's version of Australia? Knock yourself out in the outback. That'd be great. That's got to be horror team.
That is a discussion for another time. When we talked about orcs, we talked about the complexity and difficulty sometimes of dealing with real world representation in fictional spaces and in game spaces. And I think visiting the Earth Dawn version of Australia would be really, really interesting. But being aware of the stumbling blocks of original Theron Empire book and the greater awareness of stuff like that, like, it's the same as like wanting to visit and see what would be different about the Americas in Earth Dawn, because there is reference to Araucania, I think is the name of a Theron settlement that's in, I think, South America, or equivalent of modern day South America, and wanting to be respectful of that and make sure that it's something that we're aware of. And the idea of, we should do Earth Dawn's like Australia, like Earth Dawn version of Australia. And my thought is that would be really, really cool. But oh boy. Like, I would want to get native Aboriginal voices involved with that. I would want to try and see what aspects of their cultural legacy could be adapted for Earth Dawn in a respectful way. Things like that.
I already have the tagline. It's Under Dawn.
So I think one of the strengths of bar save in one sense is that it is, to borrow a phrase from D&D, it is very much kind of a points of light setting, is that there are large swaths of undefined, unexplored area, that it is very easy for a GM who wants to develop his own setting to still be able to set that in bar save, that we don't have every hex of the map filled in.
Yeah. No, my friend created his own, and he took it between Cathay and bar save. And that's where he set his. Since I pointed out to him that the actual bar save map is on planet Earth, certain, Eurasian location, he found another spot that he liked as well. And it's got a river and the whole 9 yards, a nice little couple of valleys and a nice little desert. So he took it and he planted it right smack dab there and said, that's where I'm going to base my location. So if we traveled west enough, we'd get to Barsave. If we traveled east enough, we'd get to Cathay. So he put them right between the two.
And I have to say, as I'm looking at starting work on the Yoruba book and looking at the people from across the RSC, I'm looking at the map and saying, what part of the world is that? And what's interesting that I could do there. Anyway, the next question.
Do it. Have at it. When he reached episode 3, a listener email asks about campaign level plots. Considering his re-listen is occurring after the announcement of Empty Thrones, he found our responses amusing and how much we were trying to answer honestly without revealing anything. How hard is it at times like that to keep quiet instead of gushing about the cool thing you're working on? Well, see, Josh has sworn me to secrecy because I'm not actually working on it. And so I just kind of blather on, and nobody takes me seriously because I'm not working on the actual project. Josh is kind of like, after the episode's over, he's like, maybe you shouldn't have mentioned this. Oh, I said that? Sorry. And I'm completely unaware.
It is a mix of both. I really want to talk about the cool stuff that we're working on. But there are times also where it feels really good to sort of be keeping a secret and being coy. And like in the case of Empty Thrones in particular, I talked about this actually on the Seize the GM episode that I did that got released a week or so back, that we knew that was happening and we're intentionally kind of feeding out the line as things were little tidbits or playing coy or doing stuff, because basically sort of the game within a game, the announcement, the PR, the timing of stuff, it was just really like trying to really kind of work into okay, we actually have some sort of like ongoing plan, as opposed to, well, we're just kind of throwing stuff out at the wall.
Yeah.
No, in the case of that, it was like,
it was partially coordinated. You had the graphic novel final page come out at the same time we did the podcast, at the same time the Kickstarter launched. So it was kind of a coordinated marketing effort to go, we can't say anything until this thing comes out announcing it.
And it was, it's really nice to like see people speculating and to be able to make comments, and like it was a lot. It was fun. It was fun to have that interaction, and to go back, because episode 3 would have been the very tail end of 2019, or thereabouts, when we were like really working on that and knowing that it was coming and just being like, could be. That's a fascinating question. I wonder if we are going to do anything like that.
So, and I think last week, 2 weeks ago, we mentioned that Rusty's writing some novels for Earthdawn, so those are coming as well. The graphic novel for Champions Challenge is coming as well. So it's not like we've kept many secrets, just a couple.
Yeah. Well, the Rusty novel things is not a secret that we have been keeping. It's just that because of life and whatnot, his production on those got delayed / backburnered in a certain extent, and hopefully, we've got the first one. Hopefully we'll be able to see forward progress and be able to get those out.
So no, Josh is more than happy to share what he can with what's coming down the pike.
We like to joke about Andy being the mean one that won't let us talk about anything, but she is equally as eager to play the game, as it were, as the rest of us, and I like sort of occasionally playing the mysterious, all-knowing wizard. Yeah.
Behind the curtain. So as Cory was prepping for his upcoming game, he ended up running to the Discord channel for help with understanding astral space. They helped him answer the question he had, but it got him thinking about an episode on astral space and how adepts can interact with it. Might be good for Josh and I to consider somewhere down the line.
I think it's on the list. We did.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
If not, I'll put it on the list. So we have a bunch of things
we've got. So, but yes, I agree. Astral sensing and whatnot has undergone quite a few revisions over the years. Some of them at my own hand.
Yeah.
Like especially the difference between 3rd edition and 4th edition astral sensing, and we can put it on the list. Not exactly sure when we'll get to it.
Yeah, I'll make sure to follow up on that one. A couple of mechanics questions, and then we're done with Cory's email, which has gone on for like 10 minutes. Does the extra thread in an enhanced matrix count towards the limit of extra threads based on the circle that a magician can add to a spell?
Yes.
Next.
So to expand more coherently, to make sure that I am understanding his question.
Or if you're not, then your explanation will help him understand his own question. So let's go with that.
So magicians can weave a number of additional threads based on their tier. Novice tier, which is to say circles 1 to 4, they can weave 1 additional thread. Journeyman tier, they can weave 2. Warden tier 3. Master tier 4. When you get to Journeyman tier and you get access to your enhanced matrices, you can take, if a thread is normally a 0-thread spell, and put it into an enhanced matrix with an extra thread woven into it. And I think I actually mentioned this kind of when we talked about this. Like when I got to Journeyman tier with Virag, my Nethermancer, the question is, okay, Astral Spear, which is a 1-thread range damage spell, and Spirit Dart, which is a ranged 0-thread damage spell that has a little bit less damage. Like, there are some differences between them, but I could put Astral Spear into the Matrix and have its normal 1-thread pre-woven so that I could cast Astral Spear every round, or, which would be Will +4 with extra successes adding to the damage. Or I could put Spirit Dart into that Matrix with a pre-woven spell for added effect to make it also Will +4, so that basically they're doing equivalent damage like every round on those. It's just that Spirit Dart has a little bit shorter range and has a secondary effect that goes along with it. And that is, in a few cases, like the extra threads kind of does that. That design is sort of intentional. It's not necessarily always accurate or like consistently equivalent in that regard, but that's something that you can see. If you are doing that 0-thread spell into an enhanced matrix and you are using that pre-woven thread as an extra thread, yes, it does count towards your normal limit for weaving extra threads. So if I had Spirit Dart with an extra thread in an enhanced matrix, I could weave one additional extra thread beforehand if I wanted to. But it does count against that limit.
There you go. Okay, since we're on thread weaving, does the bonus to thread weaving from some thread items apply to all versions of thread weaving that a character has if they're multidisciplined?
I believe so, because, again, without going through and checking every single item to make sure that it's phrased this way.
Yes.
Thread weaving, well, it's a simple question, but I need to qualify it, because if I don't, somebody may come back and say, well, this item says this. I recognize that there are some differences in how things are worded, and that sometimes can cause some confusion, potentially. Yes. Thread item bonuses to thread weaving should be presented in all of the cases as they provide a bonus to thread weaving tests, as opposed to most cases of a talent bonus where they are actually adding ranks. So like an item will provide bonuses, will like provide a +1 rank to spellcasting, for example, which means that if your spellcasting rank is 5 from your normal talent rank and you have that item, it is effectively a 6, meaning anything that is based off of rank is effectively a 6 as well, for the purposes of everything except determining how you qualify for advancement. Thread weaving explicitly does not do that, because otherwise, by providing a rank bonus to your thread weaving, that thread is then effectively paying for itself and no longer a factor in the limit of thread weaving in terms of the number of permanent threads that you can have woven. So, ta-da. So there are two possibilities. One, the item might say a bonus to thread weaving tests, in which case it would apply to any thread weaving tests that the character has, even if they're multidisciplined and have multiple thread weavings. The other possibility is that it may provide a bonus to elementalism tests or nethermancy tests, in which case it only applies to that variety of thread weaving. Now, I think in most cases the items that are in the books are broad, are universal, rather than being discipline specific, but it is possible that there might be items that are specifically created because of their association with a particular discipline in their history that they would only provide bonuses to that type of thread weaving. Usually spellcaster items.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Because the only thing that thread weaving for other disciplines is mainly used for is weaving threads to items.
Good point. Okay.
But yeah, so the general rule is it will provide a bonus to the tests regardless of which type of thread weaving it is, unless the item description and history pretty much specifically indicates that it should only be for elementalism or wizardry or whatever.
Gotcha.
If it doesn't call out a specific discipline thread weaving type by name, it would apply to any thread weaving tests, regardless of how many disciplines or thread weaving talents that the character might have.
So unless it's specific, it applies to everything generic.
Correct. Again, simple answer, but I wanted to provide the,
Oh, it needed some structure.
It needed some structure. I wanted to call out the, it doesn't boost rank because then it's paying for itself, and that can potentially go difficult places, because then as you increase the rank, The bonus means you can then leave more items.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that goes potentially broken places. I mean,
Gotcha.
maybe not super broken because you still have to pay legend points to weave all of those things, but it does mean that you are no longer necessarily required to make the choices between, oh, I want to use this item or I want to have a group pattern or whatever.
Yeah. Fair. Okay. So that wraps up the email portion of today's podcast. So we got through
Yes.
2 long ones, but we appreciate all of the questions because they did provide, hopefully, someone else an answer at the same time. And at least provided us an answer with the troll line marriage.
That's
So
true.
We're good there.
It did.
If you have your own questions, by all means, edsgpodcast@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer them. And if we don't, hopefully one of the listeners can, like next time, like this time. So we'll see what we can get to. On now to masks. We actually get to crack open the companion book
Yeah.
for the first time in a while.
Companion.
I went through and found like 14 different categories initially listed in the companion for masks. Josh has a sneak peek. Actually, I think he said he had some from the open source book.
Yes, well, the Iopos PDF has been released.
Mm-hmm.
The official PDF has been released, so this is available. The print version, we actually got a picture from the from the printer yesterday, as we're recording this, that showed us basically their proof, like basically what the book looks like when it's all been printed and folded up and stuff before they put the cover on.
Oh yeah, the bound pages.
So, right, like all of that.
Yeah.
But masks are cool. Take a drink, everybody. I was joking somewhere. I think on Discord.
We're not talking the KN95. We're not talking any kind of bicycling mask or anything you need for COVID.
We're talking about Earth Dawn masks.
You get to alter creatures with, so you can kind of change up everyone's expectations on anything that they can encounter in one of. And I'm just going to start with the initial 14 because each one of those has a subcategory. So like Astral has 3, Cadaverous has 3, Corrupted has 5, Elemental Aspected has 27 alone.
Well, yeah.
That you can run into. Elite Mount is only 1, but a Fast is 3, Leader is 2, Pack Tactics has 3, Poisonous has 3, Size has 6 different sizes, 4 for Skeletal, Spell Draining has 3, Stealthy has 3, and Undead has 4. So,
right. And that's just from the companion.
The
purpose of masks is to it allows this is something that experienced game masters in any game system will often do on their own, which is to say take existing creatures and modify them or change them, whether it's a simple description or play with the numbers or whatever to throw some variety to change things up for their groups, particularly if they've been doing it for a while and are comfortable with the system. Masks provides a template upon which you can do that and have a rough idea for how that might modify, roughly speaking, the difficulty of the creature as an encounter. It allows in a similar way to how the extra threads mechanic allows spells to have a longer lifespan for the player characters as their careers continue. Masks allow creatures to sort of have that same benefit for game masters. So that, lightning lizards or Brythons or, anything else that kind of...
whatever.
Any creature that might start off as being a challenge for lower circle characters, but stops being one as they get into journeyman or even warden and master tiers, potentially allows you to basically what happens is, let's say that it allows a multiplicative effect in terms of the number of creatures that are potentially available for a game master, right? That if you've got, let's say that your creature pool normally is 30 creatures. I know there are more than that, but let's say there are 30 creatures.
Yeah.
By having a couple of masks available, that multiplies that potential creature pool. Let's say you just have one mask, you suddenly have not 30, but 60 potential creatures. You have a second mask, you've now got 90 potential different creatures. Because one of the things that kind of sells well. If you look at Pathfinder, Dungeons & Dragons, creature books are hugely popular. Even if you only end up using, a third of the creatures in any particular volume.
Mm-hmm.
So masks allow creatures in Earthdawn, which tend to have have a little bit more of a environmental, ecological role niche that they fill without needing to, the Skeorks, which is sort of an apex predator of the jungles of Barsave, is no longer necessarily like a challenge. I need to now come up with an even more apex predator. And the more of those kinds of new creatures that you start throwing in starts to make the ecology of the area feel like random and stupid, potentially. Like, that's one of the potential issues with like kitchen sink settings where you're just throwing everything into it, is that, you start to wonder, well, how is this all supposed to work? Truth is, it doesn't, which is fine. But with a mask, you can take that Skeorks and throw, this is just a bigger Skeorks. So it's got higher stats, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but, you can kind of go from there.
Yes.
So that's the purpose of masks, and especially when you get into the elemental ones, it is allowing you to present different elemental-themed creatures. Like you have, say... Like, you can just take a normal animal, like a bear, and you throw an earth elemental template onto it, and you have a Brithin, sort of. Like, it's not actually, like, it's an elemental bear.
Yeah.
Or...
an earth bear.
Yeah, or a water bear. Not a tardigrade, a water bear.
Not a tardigrade.
Although a giant tardigrade thing would be weird. Anyway.
I think a giant tardigrade should be in the game somewhere, but...
Well, I mean...
No, so these are your built-in variations, essentially. I mean, they're called masks, as it's a nice, cool name, and whatever. But these are your built-in variations. So how about we just run through the quick list for everybody?
Yeah.
And we can talk about the genesis or the thought process behind it. So only because they're alphabetical, let's start with astral.
Mm-hmm.
So you can slap an astral mask on creatures, and it usually changes their appearance a little bit. Higher mystic defenses, of course, reduce physical capabilities because they're more kind of ethereal, I guess.
Yeah, it tends to give a little bit of a penalty to physical stats in exchange for mental stats. In terms of like boosted boosted mystic defense over physical defense, boosted perception and willpower with maybe reduced strength and toughness, but it also gives them astral sight. This would be something that, so just sort of kind of gives
they're more otherworldly,
a little otherworldly, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more mystical. Kind of this would be sort of a generic. It is a magical creature.
Yes.
It's a magical bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As opposed to something that is more specifically, say, elementally aligned.
Yeah. So I like the fact that it's just more astral. And if you do the right one, maybe it has a little astral attack. Down to cadaverous. And there's a distinction to make between cadaverous and undead, because I mentioned undead's at the bottom of the list. So they're similar.
Cadaverous basically, the cadaverous mask is what you do if you want to make a cadaver wolf or a cadaver bear, or like basically take any non-person, like any non-name giver, and a horror has made them a cadaver man version of whatever they are. And that's the general purpose of the cadaverous masks. They will, for the most part, modify the stats a little bit, but mainly are adding the fury and rage powers that are the hallmarks of the Cadaver Man, which is to say that you cause a wound, they start doing multiple attacks and get bonuses to damage and have some damage resistant in terms of like ignoring wound penalties kind of thing. That's basically what the cadaverous masks are.
Want to make the distinction before we get to the undead, because it's all the way at the end. And there's 3 different versions of cadaverous as well. They're all very cool.
For most of these masks that we're talking about, there will be 2 or 3 different versions. because you'll have one that is just basically applying the special abilities that go along to it with some minor stat tweaks that don't affect the circle. And then you will have ones that increase the circle as well by basically providing bigger bonuses to the attributes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
the next
Cadaverous, so like Cadaverous, you've got the normal, like you've got the normal Cadaverous, which really is just more or less like making them a little bit tougher in terms of higher death and unconscious rating, giving them the special Cadaverman powers. And then there's the Major, which adds roughly 2 circles to the creature and adds much higher bonuses to all of the stuff. And is even nastier.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the unconsciousness and death bonuses to the Major. Whew.
Yeah, plus 19 unconsciousness, plus 22 death.
Yeah.
And the modifiers, this is obviously given as in the rules for the companion, but the modifiers that are there, you don't need to like recalculate other stuff. You just add them to the values as they are. You don't need to worry about like deriving all of the secondary stuff. That work has sort of all been done for you as part of building the mask.
Very quick math for all you game masters in a hurry. Onto corrupted. So these have been corrupted by their environments and incidental exposure to the horrors, rather than direct influence. And so they're just kind of ambient mutations along the way, more or less. Yep. This is your Chernobyl catfish.
These are the ones that you would put on wildlife, say, coming out of the wastes or the Badlands or Parlength, any area that has suffered pretty heavily from horror corruption.
Or the Bloodwood.
Bloodwood, perhaps that would be applicable as well. These also tend to you've got 2 different varieties in here. You've got the fast ones and the strong ones, which is to say that the fast ones have been warped to be more lean and like emaciated and whatnot.
Deformed,
like thin and wiry and deformed in the sense that they will be very like stretched out and thin and very kind of skittery and fast as a result. And then there are the strong ones, which will tend to have like gotten bulky and have like armored plates and be more kind of like lumbery, tanky. And you've got sort of varieties of both of those. These are also templates, anything that is in an area that would have been subject to horror corruption, explicitly not Cadavermen, not undead, but other kind of horror twisted or horror constructy type of modifiers on existing creatures.
Yeah, because these are all twisted by where they grew up, not necessarily specifically a horror taint, just corrupted space, corrupted naturality.
Well, which is pretty much the result of the horrors. Yes. So these are the masks that you would throw on for a creature that is to basically indicate that the area that the group is heading into is tainted or corrupted or whatever in some fashion.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's the other thing that you can do with masks is to use them to kind of thematically tie into what is going on and themes of the adventure.
Yeah. And then we get into the really, really big one, because I took a look at this and I counted them. Elemental aspected masks. And there are 27 different variations of this. Yeah. I'm not kidding, because there's air, earth, fire, water, wood, crystal, and so forth. Well,
yeah. So you've got a couple of different varieties of
air,
like air and water. And like crystal. you've got not just air, you've got cold, which is water, but different from, it's cold water, it's frozen water, it's snow. Those are the ones that you would say you would throw, these are ones that live on the high mountain peaks and are sort of connected with the snow and ice and so forth up there.
Yeah.
Crystal is a variant of earth, kind of tied in with like the living crystal and, things like that of the crystal peaks. And so there are, like a bunch of different varieties of elemental. You've got metal, you've got wood,
Storm.
You've got, storm, which is a sort of a variant of air. So you've all like the sort of with the electric aspect. And so that is by far the largest variety of mask, because throwing different elemental aspects onto creatures
turned out to be really cool.
Can provide a wide variety of, I mean, it's kind of a gimme.
I think the elemental aspected mask is as we said, it's the largest and the most varied, but I think that is one of the cooler applications you can possibly do. is add fire to something that doesn't have fire before, or you wouldn't expect to have fire. Add water to something you wouldn't expect to have water as well, or storm. Take a griffin, make it a storm griffin.
Well, one of the sort of not directly pointed to, but subtle examples of using masks is if you look at the creatures that are in the companion, there's like 4 different varieties of Espagra that are basically just different, slightly elemental variety or masked versions of the Espagra based on where they're from.
Yeah.
And so that's like, those are largely from using masks on the base Espagra.
So there you go. Example and noted. On to the elite mount, which is only one kind. That's just because whatever animal companion you can find that's a good mount is now elite.
Right.
Yeah. And
it just basically takes your standard variety of the mount and makes it a little bit better. This works especially well and is partly intended to be used with Beastmaster / Cavalryman Nax that I don't remember whether they're actually in the companion or whether they're from the alternate animal companion rules that Morgan
published,
created, and has on his blog.
Ah, fair.
I think there is a knack. I should go check, but I'm not going to. I think there is a knack that allows you to apply a mask to an animal companion. And so Elite Mount is one of those that basically would be for that purpose.
Fair. We can cover that when we cover Nax. Eventually. Who knows? On to Fast, which of course has 3 different kinds of speeds.
Yep.
For, Fleet, Swift,
and
Quicksilver Fast. So
right, and these generally provide initiative and physical defense bonuses, making creatures a little bit more difficult for your fast-acting warriors and or swordmasters to deal with.
Yeah,
makes them a nice challenge there. If you've got like the Quicksilver fast mask, which provides a +6 to the creature's normal initiative. They also get the dash power, which allows them to move farther and still attack in that regard. So that's cool.
Yeah. So we're only halfway through the list. We got Leader. So basically, mostly, I think, designed for pack animals. Maybe?
Yeah. Basically, they're for the alpha, to use a somewhat not completely accurate term. But if you're going to have a wolf pack or a troop of apes or gorillas or something like that, this is the template that you would provide to the silverback or the lead
dominant member.
Yeah, the dominant member or whatever, because the
elder wolf of the pack.
Yeah, the elder wolf of the pack, the silverback gorilla, the any kind of social or pack animal is one. This would be the one that you would apply to.
Yeah.
What would be the leader of them?
Two types of leader masks. We're not going to go into both of them, but leading into the next one, actually, the pack tactics mask. Because you have a leader, you have a pack. So the pack tactics has 3 versions as well. Actually, leader has 2, yeah. Pack tactics has 3. And this is, again, when they act as a group. So your wolf pack, your murder of crows, I think is not a bad way to use that.
The flock of crackbills.
Not the craggle of crackbills? Just kidding.
Flock of crackbills, the little known traveling troubadour group.
Yeah, so
flock of crackbills.
When you want to have
playing it,
yeah. When you want to have Shadowmance attack as a unit, or your Krillworms attack as a unit, Pack Tactics is a nice mask to put on there.
Because they require fewer individuals to be attacking a target to apply harried penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And the higher level one, in fact, they have Surprise Strike as well.
Always deadly.
And Distract for the higher one, because then it can sort of do that.
Yeah, they will absolutely work as a pack. We've talked about Distract using talents for other disciplines. By all means, they should be able to use it as a pack. On to Poisonous, which, of course,
Poisonous, this is basically, I mean, pretty straightforward. This is adding poison to a creature. This gives the creature the ability to deal poison.
That's a cop-out. That's just obvious.
That's,
teasing.
Pretty much.
I'm teasing. And then there's 6 different versions of size. Smaller in size and bigger in size, of course, are the main 3.
Yeah, this is one of the ones, one of the few that has actual ones that reduce the relative challenge rating. So you basically have younger or juvenile versions of a creature. If you want to have, say, you want to bring a Brithen into your adventure, but your group isn't quite high enough, then you just make it a smaller one.
Yeah.
That's all.
And that's all you got to do. So,
and that is, there's nothing supernatural about it. They're just larger or smaller than normal.
Yes. And my favorite one, because I have done adventures from way, way back when, and the adventures submitted to the Earthdawn Journal and whatnot were all fan-made, and I love them, but they have skeletons. And finally, there's a skeletal mask you can apply to darn near any creature out of the books. So if you want, you want to stick a dire on somebody or a Thunder Beast, great. Make it a Thunder Beast skeleton and stick that on them instead.
This is similar to the cadaverous or corrupted. These are ones that are sort of undead / horror adjacent. They're actually skeletal does have a version that reduces the difficulty a little bit because it's just a skeleton. And so, like the cadaverous and corrupted masks basically allow you to have some sort of horror / corrupted / nethermantic related themes to the creatures that you might have in your encounters.
Yeah, I have missed those. I look forward to having skeletons either thrown at me because I'm playing 4th edition. I'm not running it yet, but I'm looking forward to those. And then we've got 3 left. But the spell draining, I think, is a nice little twist that sounds so very much Earthdawn.
If you have a group that is kind of a little bit more leans on the combat buffs and whatnot, the spell draining really gives the creatures it's kind of a spell resistance effect. They tend to have willful, which makes them a little bit more difficult to control with magic like Dominate Beast or Animal Bond. But they also have Dispelling Strike. They basically have the ability to dispel magic.
Yeah.
Basically on successful, on high attack rolls may make a Dispel Magic test against buff spells. These are the sort of magic eating critters.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me of is it the Vespa, something like that? In one of the older editions where
the Volus.
Anytime you came, the Volus, thank you. Anytime you came near them, you fell asleep.
No. Okay, no. So we're thinking of different things. You're thinking of the Veta, which was a herd animal.
That's what it is.
The Veta was like the gazelle-like thing that would cause things near it to fall asleep, but it was on a cycle. Like it was really strong at certain points of the day and really weak at others. Yep. I was thinking of the Volus, which is a creature that gets attracted by magic and will come and attack because it wants to, like it's got a magic sensing organ and it gets drawn to magic and attacks magical stuff.
Both of them started with V. We were in the same ballpark. So,
and then there's the Gatehound, as well, which has a sort of magic dampening effect. So this is kind of along those similar lines.
Yeah, honestly enough, I've not used the Gatehound, but I probably should soon.
Gatehound is cool. Master.
So spell draining's on there, and we got 2 left. So stealthy, of course, should happen. Because this is just environmental. They've naturally camouflaged and adapted to moving around their environment better than most things. So that could seriously apply to anything, which is why it's a mask. And I mean, we're not kidding. Cloaked, shrouded, and shadow. So I don't want to come across a shadow Brithen anytime soon. That would just be horrendous.
Yeah, these masks basically sort of attach ambush, stealthy stride, and when you get into the more powerful versions, they can regain surprise so that they can, they basically add like sort of thiefy powers onto in terms of their thing. Like you throw this on top of an already ambush predator type creature, and they can get particularly nasty.
Yeah, trying to figure out how that would work for a cave crab, and that just gives me shivers. And then lastly, we have the Undead mask, which has 4 different versions as well. You have putrefied and fresh, rancid, and rotten. So, and those are out of order, by the way.
And this is just sort of the generic, like, it's not a cadaver man.
No.
In the sense that it doesn't have the berserker stuff that the cadaver man does, but it is otherwise undead. So they get, basically immunity to fear, resist pain. At higher levels, they stink, and so potentially provide harried penalties to people fighting them.
These are the Monty Python definition of mostly dead.
Yeah, well, they're dead. They're no longer. They are no longer Yeah, no longer animal companion suitable. But yeah, this is just sort of the generic. It's not skeletal. It's not a cadaver man, but it's undead.
Yeah.
Just kind of generic.
I can already guess that some Nethermancer somewhere, and you're playing one, Virag, might want to take an undead or a cadaverous as an animal companion. So we've already put the kibosh
Except that those are not, yeah. I mean, as the undead one here says, these creatures are generally no longer suitable as animal companions or mouse.
Yes. So.
And they are no longer considered creatures for the purposes of most talents and are undead. Like they basically, that changes them from being creatures and therefore subject to Beastmaster talents.
Yep.
And changes them to undead, which then makes them so vulnerable to Nethermancer talents and abilities.
Yes. So just want to lay it out there. Don't want any emails about, hey, can I? No.
I mean, if your game master wants you to, if you can work it out with your game master,
sure,
because it's thematically appropriate, that's cool. A Nethermancer would be more inclined to have a spirit type of thing worked up as a companion in that regard, rather than having an undead, because at least as of right now, the Nethermancer spell list doesn't have the create undead stuff that early versions of it had with the create skeletons and create cadaver men.
Yeah.
It's got less of that currently in their spell kit and dealing more with spirits.
Yeah. But we'll see what the future holds. But as of right now, no. So
the future holds that we are going to wrap this episode up.
So there's no more future for this one. We're done. We've hit our end of the masks.
As of this recording, as of the recording of this episode, there are actually still a little bit less than 48 hours left in the Empty Thrones Kickstarter. But by the time this episode drops, it will have ended. It ends as of July 31st. So we had beaten our final stretch goal of $30,000. So
done.
There will be a digital map of Iopos that will be created and released.
Nice. Here
in the not too distant future.
So
I need to
you gotta print it yourself.
Finish up a couple of things. But yeah, that's where things are. So send us an email if you'll want to ask a question or make a comment. EDSGpodcast@gmail.com. @EarthDawnG for the podcast Twitter feed, @Metaxas for me, @something for Dan. I noticed that you are actually, I saw you on Twitter.
Yeah, I followed it because I'm like, we need to boost
@Boyce_voice.
Yes.
Is your Twitter handle, so people can follow that. And I don't know that you actually tweet much, but there's that. Facebook, Discord, podcast. Forums. So you can find us, you can ask questions.
We'll be here.
And all of that stuff.
We're not going away anytime soon. So until
not planning on it.
The next episode, it's time for you to go mask your own legend.
Good night, everybody.